What if the US replaced cash with a tracked digital dollar? Imagine it's Tuesday, just a regular Tuesday. You're standing in line for a coffee you probably don't need but definitely want. You get to the front, you smile, you tap your phone to the little plastic reader. A familiar ritual, a dance you've done 1,000 times. But this time, there's a new sound. Not the cheerful ding of approval, not the angry buzz of insufficient funds. Just a soft, polite digital chime. A sound of administrative action. And on the screen, a message. Small, sans serif font, no exclamation points. It just says, "Transaction flagged. Please consult your FedNow Liberty Wallet for more information." The barista, a kid who can't be more than 19, doesn't even look up. He's seen it before. He just sighs and says, "Next." And you're left standing there, not with a problem, but with a task, an inquiry, a quiet, chilling piece of digital homework. This isn't a mistake, it's a feature. Hey there, welcome back to Divergence Point. I'm glad you're here. Settle in, find a comfortable spot, pour yourself a drink. What time is it where you are right now? Is it late? I hope you're feeling safe and sound. If you enjoy these little explorations into the futures that might be creeping up on us, maybe consider subscribing. It lets me know I'm not just talking to myself in a dark room, which, let's be honest, I am, but it's nice to pretend. So, how did we get here? How did we get to a world where buying a latte requires a silent, algorithmic permission slip? It didn't happen overnight. It wasn't a hostile takeover. It was an upgrade. It was a solution. It was sold to us as a matter of patriotic convenience. And we bought it. Of course we did. The story begins not with a threat, but with a promise of protection. Remember the great financial scare of 27? The one where a coordinated cyber attack, or maybe just a series of cascading glitches, the story was never quite clear, froze the nation's banking system for 3 whole days? 3 days! No ATMs, no credit cards, no wire transfers. For 3 days, the only money that worked was the crumpled paper in our pockets. And we discovered, as a nation, that we didn't have very much of it. Panic is a funny thing. It carves new pathways in the public mind. It makes the unthinkable seem not only possible, but necessary. The crisis passed, of course, but the fear remained. A deep, primal fear that the system was fragile, that our wealth was just a number on a screen that someone else controlled, and that someone else could be a hostile state, a terrorist cell, a kid in a basement halfway across the world. The government needed a fix, not just a patch, but a fundamental change, a modernization. And that's when they rolled her out onto that stage in Washington, D.C., the FedNow Liberty Wallet, the digital dollar. The sales pitch was a masterpiece, a trifecta of unassailable logic. First, security. This wasn't just about stopping another hack. This was about fighting crime itself. Every dollar would now be traceable. No more money laundering. No more terror financing. No more tax evasion. The black market, they promised, would wither and die in the light of total transparency. Think of the children, they said. Think of national security. Who could argue with that? Second, efficiency. Stimulus checks during the next pandemic, instantly in your wallet. Disaster relief funds beamed directly to the phones of those in the affected zip codes. No more bureaucracy, no more lost mail, no more waiting. Just pure, clean, efficient help. For a society obsessed with speed and convenience, it was irresistible. It sounded like progress. And third, this was the masterstroke. It was about patriotism. The talking heads on the news warned us night after night about the rise of foreign digital currencies, that other nations were trying to undermine the dollar's dominance. The Liberty Wallet wasn't just a new technology. It was America's financial armor, a way to project strength in a new digital age. Adopting it was your civic duty. It's a powerful cocktail, isn't it? Fear, convenience, and patriotism. Admit it, you'd have been tempted. A part of you, the part that hates paperwork and worries about the future, would have felt a sense of relief. A digital system backed by the full faith and credit of the United States. Safe, simple, secure. The transition was gentle. At first, you got a small discount for using your Liberty Wallet. Then, ATMs started to become scarce, harder to find. Then, more and more stores went cashless for security reasons. Physical money became an inconvenience, the dirty, inefficient relic of a bygone era, the kind of thing only criminals and conspiracy theorists would use. The promise was a clean, frictionless world, a safe world. But underneath the promise, a new kind of architecture was being built. The money in your new wallet wasn't like the paper in your old one. It was programmable. Money that comes with rules. And nobody ever stopped to ask the most important question: who gets to write the rules? It started, as these things so often do, with free money. Another crisis, another stimulus. Not a check this time, nothing so archaic. It arrived without a sound. A notification on your phone, a crisp new balance in your FedNow Liberty Wallet. The amount was generous. A little digital cushion to soften the blow of a turbulent economy. And it was instant, no waiting. The efficiency was breathtaking. It felt like help. It felt like care. But then you read the fine print, and there wasn't much of it. Just a couple of lines beneath the balance. The first rule was about time. The funds, it stated, would expire in 30 days. They weren't meant for saving. They were for spending, for stimulating. The official term was a disbursement incentive, a little nudge to get the economic engine humming again. It was logical in a cold macroeconomic way, but it felt strange, like the money wasn't quite yours, like you were just a temporary custodian for a number that had to be moved along, a gift horse you weren't allowed to look in the mouth. The second rule was about content. The funds were designated for essential goods and services, groceries, utilities, rent, gasoline. You could only spend them at registered, approved vendors. Your local supermarket? Fine. The power company? Of course. Your landlord's certified portal? Yes. That little independent bookstore you love? The one with the creaky floors? Not so much. That bar where you go to unwind after a long week? Nope. The government, in its infinite and data-driven wisdom, had decided what you needed and what you didn't. And this is where you start to feel it, isn't it? That little itch of unease. The slow dawning realization that the architecture of this new convenience has some very high, very smooth, invisible walls. The real test came a few months later. The rules started to expand beyond just the stimulus money. They began to apply in subtle ways to your own funds, the money you earned. It began with a gentle algorithmic suggestion. A notification might pop up if you tried to buy a second bottle of whiskey in a week. Health advisory. Consider limiting alcohol consumption for optimal wellness. It was just a suggestion. You could swipe it away. At first. Then came the blocks. Not for everyone, just in certain states, certain municipalities, as pilot programs. A purchase of tobacco might be declined after 10 p.m. A transaction at a state-line casino might be silently blocked if your wallet's registered address was in a state that didn't approve of gambling. It wasn't a law passed by Congress. It was a policy update, an administrative tweak in the code, a decision made by a committee you'd never heard of to promote public health and financial responsibility. The horror isn't loud, it's quiet. It's the public, quiet shame of a transaction being denied for a reason you can't explain to the cashier. It's the cold little knot in your stomach when you realize you can't buy a birthday gift for your friend, a nice bottle of scotch, because an algorithm decided you've had enough for 1 month. You are no longer a private citizen making a private purchase. You are a data point being managed. And then the real consequence settled in. The one no one saw coming, because no one was looking down. They were all looking up at the big, scary ideas of government control. But the true devastation was at the ground level. The informal economy. The beautiful, messy human network of cash in hand. The teenager who mowed your lawn. The friend you paid $20 to help you move a couch. The babysitter. The artist selling paintings in the park. The entire gig economy that ran. The teenager who mowed your lawn. The friend you paid $20 to help you move a couch. The babysitter. The artist selling paintings in the park. The entire gig economy that ran on unreported tips. All of it gone, vaporized. Every transaction was now a formal, taxable, recorded event. To pay the kid next door for walking your dog, you now had to send it to their Liberty Wallet, which meant it was income, which meant it was tracked. The friction, the formality, the surveillance, it was too much. The little exchanges that build community, the favors and side hustles that help people get by, they just stopped. It was a cleaner world, a more efficient, more orderly world, a world with perfect records and no tax loopholes. It was also a colder world, a world where every single human interaction involving value was now mediated by the state. You didn't just buy a coffee. You engaged in a state-sanctioned transfer of funds, logged in a federal ledger, and cross-referenced with your digital identity and social metrics. Remember that polite digital chime from the coffee shop? The one that said, "Transaction flagged." That wasn't a punishment. That was the system letting you know it was working perfectly. It had learned your patterns, your politics from your donations, your health from your purchases, your social circle from your peer-to-peer transfers. And it had just found something it didn't like. So let me ask you, what do you do when the only way to live freely is to become a criminal? You don't become a criminal, of course not. That's a messy, dramatic word for messy, dramatic people. No, you just get creative. Humanity, for all its flaws, is a genius at finding the cracks in any system. We are creatures of the loophole. We are artists of the workaround. When the official world becomes too rigid, too bright, too sterile, we don't break the walls down. We build a cozier, dimmer world in the shadows. And so, the black market was reborn. But forget everything you think you know about black markets. There were no trench coats, no secret handshakes in rain-slicked alleyways. It was far more banal, far more intimate. It started with barter, the oldest form of commerce resurrected in the digital age. You, an accountant, did your neighbor's taxes. In return, she, a dentist, cleaned your kid's teeth. No money changed hands. No Liberty Wallets were involved. It was just a favor, an exchange of skills. But it wasn't. It wasn't. It was a transaction, a quiet, untraceable, and deeply illegal act of mutual survival. You both knew it. And the shared, unspoken crime of it forged a strange and powerful bond between you, a bond of silent dissent. Soon, you saw it everywhere. The yoga instructor trading private lessons for fresh eggs from someone's backyard chicken coop. The mechanic fixing a car in exchange for a cord of firewood. The entire social fabric began to reweave itself into a tapestry of undeclared value, a vast and complex web of favors owed and debts paid, completely invisible to the FedNow ledger. And for a while, it felt like a victory. It felt human. But barter is clumsy. It requires a perfect coincidence of needs. So, a new currency was needed, a physical medium of exchange. Some people, the ones who had been ringing the alarm bells for years, turned to gold, little coins and wafers kept in dusty safes. But gold is for the rich. It's for funding an escape, not for buying groceries. Ordinary people needed something else, and the solution was pathetic. It was ingenious and deeply, deeply sad. Gift cards, prepaid Visa cards, Amazon credits, Starbucks vouchers, gas station cards. These little rectangles of plastic became the new cash. They were anonymous, or anonymous enough. They had a fixed, state-sanctioned value. You could buy a $200 gift card from a corporate chain store, a perfectly legitimate, traceable transaction, and then hand it to someone as payment for an off-the-books job. It was the digital equivalent of a crumpled wad of bills, a clean, corporate-branded container for illicit value. Black markets sprang up online, not for drugs, but for the brokering and trading of these cards at a slight discount. It was a whole new form of currency arbitrage played out in suburban living rooms. Do you see the beautiful, tragic irony here? In a desperate attempt to escape a centralized government currency, people turned to a decentralized currency provided by other massive corporations. We traded one panopticon for another. It was a desperate lateral move, not an escape. The psychological toll was immense. You now lived two lives. Your official, compliant life on the FedNow network, making all the right purchases from all the right vendors, and your real life, your shadow life, conducted through whispers, bartered services, and a wallet full of plastic from Target and Home Depot. The paranoia was constant. Not a fear of a SWAT team kicking down your door. Something much quieter. The fear of the audit. The fear of the algorithm. The system was smart, remember? It learned. And it didn't just look at what you were doing. It started looking at what you weren't doing. It might notice, for instance, that you hadn't paid for a haircut in over a year, but your social media photos show you with a neat, fresh trim. It might notice that your grocery bills have dropped by 30%, yet your utility bills show a home that is clearly still occupied. You haven't bought gasoline in 6 months, but your car's GPS shows a daily commute. The system doesn't need to see the crime. It just needs to see the anomaly, the statistical ghost in the machine. It doesn't send a cop. It just sends a notification, a polite, automated inquiry. A discrepancy has been detected in your expenditure patterns. Please provide records for services rendered. Failure to comply may result in a temporary hold on your account. And there it is. That's the real threat. Not prison, just being switched off. And you realize the cage wasn't the tracking. It was the convenience you traded your freedom for. The trap wasn't that they could see everything. It was that they could make you disappear with a single keystroke. The switch from citizen to liability is never announced. There's no formal declaration, no letter in the mail. It begins with a quiet click. For you, it was a $50 donation. You sent it to a journalist, a real one, the kind that writes long, meticulously researched articles that nobody has the patience to read anymore. He was reporting on agricultural conglomerates, and his work was unpopular. He had been deplatformed from all the respectable networks, of course. Too controversial. He now funded his work through a small, independent subscription service. Your donation was an act of quiet defiance, a small vote cast with your wallet for a world you wanted to believe in, a world where truth mattered. You clicked the button, sent the $50 to his public Liberty Wallet address, and felt a tiny, fleeting warmth, a sense of civic participation. You had no idea what you had just done. You had no idea that you had just signed your name on a list. Not a government list, nothing so crude. It was a list compiled by a third-party data broker, a private company that rated financial transactions for reputational risk. A list that was then sold for pennies per name to banks, insurance companies, and credit agencies. The first hint of your new status came 3 weeks later. You applied to refinance your car loan. Better interest rate, save a few bucks a month. Your credit was perfect. You had never missed a payment in your life. The application was denied. No reason was given, just a form letter citing proprietary risk assessment models. When you called, a bored customer service agent read from a script. There was nothing she could do. The decision was final. The system had spoken. This is the genius of the new control. It's outsourced. The government doesn't have to punish you. It just creates a system where the private sector does it for them, with the plausible deniability of market-based risk. You weren't punished for your political views. You were just a bad investment. Then came the other little paper cuts. Your home insurance premium went up by 20% at renewal. The reason? Changes in community risk profile. You tried to get a new cell phone plan, but you were no longer eligible for the best deals. You had to pay a security deposit. A deposit? You! The world doesn't turn gray. The sun still rises, but you start to feel a subtle, ambient friction in everything you do. Life is suddenly more expensive, more difficult, more humiliating. You are being pushed to the margins of the economy, slowly and silently. And the psychological effect is devastating. You start to second-guess everything. That online magazine you subscribe to, is it on the right list? The author of that book you just bought, what are their politics? Every tap of your phone becomes a potential misstep. You start to censor not just your speech, but your thoughts, your curiosities, your very consumption. The algorithm, it turns out, is a very sensitive and judgmental reader. But the true horror, the real moment your blood runs cold, is when it touches your human relationships. Your friend, the one you've known for 20 years, asks to borrow a little money to fix his car, a few $100s. You send it to him, wallet to wallet. A week later, he calls you, his voice tight with a strange mix of anger and fear. His own insurance premium just went up. His application for a small business loan was flagged for further review because of association with high-risk financial actors. The high-risk financial actor was you. He doesn't have to say it. You can hear it in his silence. He can't afford to be your friend anymore.
not financially. The system has made you contagious, a carrier of risk. This is financial excommunication. It's a secular damnation for the digital age. You are being severed from the herd, not by force, but by 1,000 tiny, automated, dispassionate calculations of risk that make it too inconvenient, too expensive for others to help you. You're not in prison, you're free. But you are alone, adrift in a sea of perfect, frictionless transactions from which you are now excluded. Your world has become a high-walled garden, and you've just been politely and irrevocably shown the gate. Now, tell me, when the cost of helping someone is to be flagged yourself, how much does friendship cost? You are a ghost now. You haunt the edges of your own life. You are physically present, but financially, you have ceased to exist. Your friends, the few that remain, speak to you in person, never on recorded lines. They help where they can, but always with a nervous, apologetic glance over their shoulder. They hand you a bag of groceries, a small kindness that now feels like a criminal conspiracy. You are their dirty little secret. And you realize the term financial excommunication was too gentle. This isn't a shunning. This is a hunt. The system, the great benevolent FedNow ledger, doesn't just cast out its heretics. It has to make an example of them. It has to ensure that the parallel economy of gift cards and barter doesn't become a viable alternative. It has to make the shadows a very, very cold place to live. How does it do that? It doesn't send agents to your door. It just starts to shrink the world. The gift card trick was the first to die. A simple software update. Now, to activate a prepaid card over a certain amount, it had to be linked to a valid Liberty Wallet at the point of purchase. For consumer protection, of course, to prevent fraud. Overnight, the new cash became traceable. The loophole was sealed. Next, it came for the barter economy. It leveraged the one thing it had absolute control over: data. It began to cross-reference public records and corporate data streams with a terrifying new precision. It saw the mechanic whose Liberty Wallet showed no income for parts, yet the Department of Motor Vehicles showed a steady stream of cars registered as repaired at his address. It saw the therapist whose professional license was active, but who had no record of client payments in her wallet. It didn't accuse them of anything. It just restricted them. Their accounts were put on a provisional status. Their transactions were capped at a low daily limit. Their access to credit was frozen. It was a slow, administrative strangulation. They were being punished not for what they did, but for the shape of the silence in their financial records. And you are the silence. You are the anomaly they are hunting. Your days become a masterclass in paranoia. You can't just opt out. That's the fatal flaw in your thinking. To have no data is to be the most suspicious data point of all. So you have to perform. You have to create a false trail of compliance. You use the last few dollars in your restricted wallet to buy a coffee once a week, just to show a recurring legitimate transaction. You purchase a cheap, state-approved news subscription. You buy a single lottery ticket. You are feeding the beast, giving it a stream of harmless data so it doesn't come looking for the harmful truth. It's a strange kind of theater, isn't it? Performing normalcy for an audience of no one. An algorithm. You are carefully curating a fictional version of yourself, a compliant, boring citizen, just to be left alone. But the psychological strain is the worst part. You start to see the world not as a collection of people, but as a network of potential risks and assets. You meet someone new, and your first thought isn't, "Are they interesting?" or "Are they kind?" It's, "Are they clean?" You find yourself subtly probing, asking questions about their work, their spending habits, trying to gauge their level of compliance. You are becoming an agent in your own oppression, viewing others through the same cold, calculating lens that the system views you. This is the death of dissent. It's not about banning books or shutting down protests. You can still scream your opinion on a street corner. The First Amendment is technically intact. But what happens when the people who stop to listen are flagged for associating with a person of interest? What happens when the simple act of standing near you makes them a financial risk?
Dissent requires community. It requires support. It requires the simple, practical ability to pay for a bus ticket, to buy a bottle of water, to fund a website. By turning every transaction into an act of allegiance, the system doesn't need to silence your voice. It just makes it too expensive for anyone to hear you. And then, the final turn of the screw. You go to buy your weekly camouflage coffee. The transaction is declined. You check your phone. There's a new message in your Liberty Wallet. Not the polite transaction flagged of before. This one is different. It is calm, clear, and utterly final. It says, "Account deactivated. Your risk profile is no longer compatible with the FedNow network. This decision is irreversible." Irreversible. You read the word again and again. It doesn't scream. It doesn't flash. It just sits there on the screen of your phone, calm and absolute. It has the flat, featureless finality of a concrete wall. Your heart is hammering in your chest, a frantic, trapped bird. But the word on the screen doesn't tear. The world outside that little screen hasn't changed. The barista is still wiping down the counter. The soft indie music is still playing. People are still laughing, tapping their phones, living in a world of effortless, approved transactions. For a dizzying second, you feel like you've slipped into a different dimension. You are inches away from them, but separated by an invisible, uncrossable gulf. They are the connected. You, something else. You walk out of the coffee shop. The automatic door opens for you, a last lingering courtesy of a world you no longer belong to. And the walk home is the longest walk of your life. Every storefront you pass is a locked gate. The grocery store, the pharmacy, the subway turnstile. They are no longer parts of a city. They are nodes in a network, and your key has just been broken. Your phone, the device that was once your master key to civilization, is now just a piece of glass and metal, a clock, a brick with a very cruel message on it. The first thing you think of, strangely, isn't the big picture. It's not your rent or your future. It's the milk in your refrigerator. You have half a gallon, and some eggs, and a box of pasta. You begin a frantic, silent inventory of every edible item in your apartment. For the first time in your adult life, you are face to face with the raw, brutal calculus of subsistence. Your wealth is no longer a number in a wallet. It is measured in calories. This is the visceral reality of being deleted. Once home, the panic gives way to a cold, methodical dread. You sit on your couch and trace the tendrils of the network through your life. The electricity powering the light you're sitting under, the water in your taps, the Wi-Fi signal that brought you the news of your own demise. Each is a service. Each requires a payment that is scheduled to be automatically deducted from an account that no longer exists.
You are living on borrowed time, in a home that will soon go dark and quiet and cold. You make the call you know you shouldn't make to your sister. Her voice is warm, familiar, a sound from a world you used to know. You try to explain, but the words feel insane as you say them. My account is gone. They deactivated me. You sound like a conspiracy theorist, a madman ranting about invisible forces. She doesn't understand at first. She thinks it's a technical glitch, a mistake. Call the helpline, she says, her voice full of practical, useless advice. There is no helpline, you say, and the emptiness in your own voice scares you. It's irreversible. And then silence, a long, terrible pause on the line. And in that silence, you can hear her thinking. You can hear the gears of her own survival instinct turning, the risk assessment. You know what she's picturing. She's picturing you showing up at her door. She's picturing how she would feed you, how she would hide you. You can hear her calculating the cost of loving you. I have to go, she says, her voice suddenly thin, brittle. I'll figure something out. I'll call you back. She won't. You both know it. The risk is too high. How could she even help? Hand you a bag of untraceable groceries in a parking lot like a spy making a dead drop? The system didn't just isolate you. It made you radioactive to everyone you've ever loved. You hang up the phone. The true psychological horror is not that you have been abandoned by the state. It's that the system has been designed to force the people who love you to abandon you too. It weaponizes their own instinct for self-preservation against the bond of human affection. You are utterly, completely, and irrevocably alone. The apartment around you is no longer a home. It's a tomb, filled with the artifacts of a life you are no longer permitted to live. And the only thing you know for sure is that you can't stay here. The system isn't just watching, it's closing in.
You don't sleep. You don't eat. You just sit in the deepening gloom of your apartment and listen to the sounds of a civilization that is methodically unplugging you from its circuits. First, the Wi-Fi cuts out. The little green light on the router blinks a few times, turns orange, and then goes dark. The silence it leaves behind is deafening. It was your last window, your last ghostly connection to the world that had cast you out. Now, the window is boarded up. You are not a person anymore. You are a loose end. And the system, in its quiet, relentless efficiency, does not like loose ends. The physical world begins to follow the digital one. 2 days after your deactivation, there's a knock on the door. It's not a loud, aggressive knock. It's a single, sharp rap of knuckles on wood. Official, unemotional. You don't answer. You don't breathe. You sit perfectly still, a statue in your own living room, listening to the sound of paper being taped to your door. You wait until the sound of footsteps recedes down the hall before you move. You peel the notice off the wood. The paper is cheap, wafer thin. It's an eviction notice. You have 72 hours to vacate the premises for non-payment. 72 hours until the landlord, with the full state-sanctioned authority of the network, changes the digital locks. 72 hours. The countdown is no longer abstract. It's a number on a piece of paper held in your trembling hand. And this is where the real panic should set in, right? The screaming, the crying, the despair. But it doesn't. Something colder and more ancient takes its place. A survival instinct so deep you never knew you had it. You are no longer thinking about justice or fairness or the life you lost. You are thinking about exits. You are thinking about weight. You are thinking about the physics of escape. You begin to move through your apartment with a new kind of clarity. You see it not as a home, but as a shipwreck. You are a survivor, gathering what few supplies you can before the whole thing sinks. And you quickly realize a terrifying truth. Almost everything you own is worthless. Your television, a useless anchor of glass. Your computer, a dead piece of silicon. Your degree on the wall, your collection of digital books, your online achievements, they are all ghosts. They have no mass, no value. The most valuable things you own are now the ones that never had a warranty. The heavy wool blanket your grandmother knit. The sturdy pair of waterproof hiking boots you bought for a trip you never took. A cast iron skillet, a multi-tool, a bottle of aspirin. The things that work without a login. The things that work when the power is out. You cram them into an old backpack. You feel like a caricature, a prepper for a collapse that already happened. A collapse that was silent, personal, and targeted only at you. Admit it, you've thought about this before, haven't you? In some idle moment, you've considered what you would pack in a bug-out bag. But you always imagined it as a response to a mushroom cloud, a hurricane, a zombie apocalypse, a grand, dramatic end of the world. You never imagined you'd be packing it to escape an administrative decision. You're not planning for the end of the world. You are the end of your world. Then you remember the one thing of real, untraceable value you have left. In the back of your sock drawer, in a small velvet box, is your grandfather's watch. A mechanical automatic. No battery, no chip. Just gears and springs and the kinetic energy of a moving wrist. It's an artifact from a different time, a time before the network. And in the right hands, it's worth more than your life savings ever were. It's a key, a passport.
Your plan is simple because it has to be. There is a place, a rumor you heard whispered online in the final days of your access. A dead zone. An old industrial park 100 miles outside the city, where the network coverage is spotty and the old ways of doing things never quite died. A place where the deleted go. A sanctuary for the financial ghosts. But how do you travel 100 miles when you can't buy a bus ticket, when you can't fuel a car? You walk. You walk out the door of your building with nothing but the weight on your back and the heavier, dead weight of your grandfather's watch in your pocket. You don't look back. You just follow the rust-colored map you memorized from an image you can no longer access, heading for the edge of the grid. You are escaping the most sophisticated surveillance system ever created. But what exactly are you running toward? The city is a machine for seeing. You understand this now. It's not a place for people. It's a habitat for cameras. They are everywhere, perched like metallic birds on every traffic light, embedded in the glossy facades of every corporate building, peering from the doorbell of every suburban home. You'd never truly noticed them before. They were just part of the urban texture, as mundane as fire hydrants or mailboxes. Now, they are eyes. 1,000,000 unblinking algorithmic eyes. And you are a glitch in their field of vision. Your journey isn't measured in miles. It's measured in shadows. You move from the blind spot of one building to the cover of an overpass. You learn the rhythm of the traffic cameras, the slow, predictable sweep of their gaze. You walk not through the city, but through the gaps in its awareness. Hunger is the first real lesson. It's a teacher with no patience and a single, brutal message. For 2 days, you survive on the last of the food from your apartment, eaten cold and rationed in pathetic little portions. But then it's gone, and you are left with a raw, gnawing emptiness that eclipses all other thoughts. You find yourself behind a bakery at dawn. The smell of fresh bread, a scent you once associated with comfort and warmth, is now a form of torture. In the dumpster, beneath a layer of wet coffee grounds, is a bag of day-old bagels. They are hard, cold, and perfect. You pull one out, your hands shaking, and devour it like an animal, the rough bread scraping the roof of your mouth. You're not just eating. You are committing an act. You are crossing a line
you can never uncross. A person with a home doesn't eat garbage. You are no longer that person. The shame is so sharp, so acidic, it's a taste all its own. But you meet others. You don't speak, not at first. You just see them. A woman with a haunted look in her eyes, meticulously sorting through the recycling bins behind a supermarket. An old man, his face a roadmap of hard lines, sleeping beneath a bridge, wrapped in layers of newspaper that rustle like dry leaves when he moves.
You are not a community. You are a scattered, feral tribe, bound only by your shared invisibility. You learn the protocol of the damned. You don't make eye contact. You give each other a wide berth. You acknowledge each other's existence with a shared, silent understanding. Everyone out here has lost everything, and that makes them dangerous. Trust is a luxury that requires a wallet to afford. One evening, you're huddled in the skeletal remains of a derelict bus station when another man approaches. He's younger than you, thin and wiry, with eyes that dart back and forth, constantly scanning. He doesn't say hello. He just sits a dozen feet away, opens a can of cold beans, and starts eating with a plastic fork. "Saw you by the overpass," he says, his voice a low rasp. "You're new." You just nod. "Got a name?" he asks. You almost say it, your real name, the name tied to your deleted life, but it catches in your throat. That name is a liability. It's a ghost that can still be hunted. "No," you say. He seems to like that answer. Good. Names are for the network. He points his fork at you. "You got a skill? Something that works when the lights are out?" The question hangs in the cold air. A skill? What was your skill? You managed spreadsheets. You wrote marketing copy. You lived in the abstract world of digital value. You look down at your soft, clean hands and realize you have no skills. Not here. No, you admit. The man grunts, a sound that isn't quite pity, isn't quite contempt. Then you need a sponsor. The zones aren't a charity. They have rules. You can't just walk in. Zones, plural. The rumor was a simplification. There wasn't just one dead zone. There were dozens, little pockets of shadow, each with its own gatekeeper, its own laws, its own brutal economy. What's the price, you ask, your hand instinctively going to the lump in your pocket where your grandfather's watch is hidden. The man looks at you, and for the first time, his eyes stop darting around. They focus on you with a piercing, predatory intensity. "The price," he says, with the ghost of a smile, "is proving you're more useful alive than you are dead." His name was Rat, or at least that's the name he gave you. A name earned in the gutters of this new world. A name that carried the stench of dumpsters and the sharp, nervous energy of a cornered animal. He wasn't offering you a place. He was offering you a transaction, a broker's deal. And the only collateral you had was the weight in your pocket.
You show him the watch. You don't want to. It feels like a desecration, like showing a family photograph to a pawnbroker. You pull it out. The polished steel and crystal face gleaming unnaturally in the dying light of the bus station. A tiny, perfect machine, ticking silently with a life of its own. A heartbeat from a world of craftsmanship and honor.
Rat doesn't see a family heirloom. He sees a key. He sees his commission. He takes it from your hand, his grimy fingers smudging the crystal. He holds it up to his ear, listening not to the time, but to the intricate, mechanical whir of its value. Good, he nods, his eyes glinting. Swiss movement, heavy. This'll get you an introduction, nothing more. He slips it into his own pocket, and a piece of your past disappears with it. Stay close, don't talk, and try not to look like you're about to cry. The final journey is a blur of fear. Rat moves through the industrial outskirts of the city with a fluid, practiced grace. You are a clumsy, noisy anchor he has to drag behind him. He leads you through collapsed sewer tunnels, along rust-eaten railway lines, and across fields of cracked pavement where nature is beginning its slow, patient work of reclamation. You realize he's not just avoiding people, he's avoiding technology. He points out the motion sensors hidden in the weeds near a perimeter fence, the acoustic detectors buried beneath a gravel path. The network doesn't just stop at the edge of the city. It has feelers, it has tripwires. It monitors its own borders, ensuring that nothing and no one gets out or in. After hours of walking, a new smell hits you. Not the city's smell of exhaust and decay. This is the smell of wood smoke, of unwashed bodies, of chemical solvents, and something acrid like burning plastic. This is the smell of a place that is making do. The dead zone isn't a town, it's a wound. An old, sprawling factory complex, its brick walls stained black with a century of soot. Its windows are boarded over or covered with thick sheets of plastic. Figures move in the shadows between the buildings, their faces gaunt, their eyes constantly scanning, assessing. There is no welcome here. There is only watchfulness. Rat leads you to a hulking structure that must have once been a loading dock. Two figures stand guard, holding not guns, but heavy lengths of iron pipe. They don't challenge Rat, they just look at you, their eyes as cold and dead as rusted machinery. You are led inside into a cavernous room, lit by a few bare, flickering bulbs powered by a groaning generator. The air is thick with the hum of improvised machinery and the murmur of low voices. This is not a sanctuary, it's a workshop. People are stripping copper wire, sorting salvaged electronics, repairing tools. Everyone is working. Everyone has a purpose. And at the center of it all, sitting at a steel desk under the brightest light, is a woman. She is old, with hair pulled back in a severe bun, and she's looking at a thick, hand-written ledger. She doesn't look like a warlord. She looks like a librarian from hell. Rat places your grandfather's watch on her desk. She glances at it, then at you. Her eyes are the most frightening thing you have ever seen.
not because they are cruel, but because they are entirely devoid of emotion. They are the eyes of a system.
He's clean, Rat says. No skills. The woman, the gatekeeper, looks at your soft hands. She looks at the terror in your eyes. She picks up the watch. This is payment for your guide, she says, her voice a dry rasp. She slides the watch back across the desk to Rat, who snatches it and disappears into the shadows without a word. Your last link to your old life is gone. Now we have the matter of you. I can work, you stammer. We are all workers here, she says, not looking at you, her gaze already back on her ledger. But we are full up on scavengers and mechanics. What were you before, in the old world? You hesitate. The truth feels like a weakness. I was an analyst, you whisper. I managed accounts, records. For the first time, she looks up, and a flicker of something that might be interest crosses her face. You understand ledgers. You understand how to track assets, how to find discrepancies? Yes, you say. Good, she says. She pushes the heavy book across the desk toward you. The old bookkeeper died last week. You start now. You will live here. You will eat here. And you will record every transaction that comes through this zone. You will be its memory, its mind. She points to an empty stool beside the desk. You've done it. You've made it. You're inside. You are safe from the network. But as you sit down on that hard, cold stool, you realize you haven't escaped anything. You have simply been acquired by a different system. You traded a digital cage for an analog one. Your name is gone. Your past is gone. You are no longer a person. You are a function. You are the ledger. You are not the ledger. You are its priest. The book is your altar. The pen is your sacrament. And the entries you make are a grim catechism of human value. Your world has shrunk to the columns and rows of this massive, grease-stained book. You learn its language, the shorthand symbols for barter, for debt, for salvage, for life, and for death. Days and nights blur into one long, continuous act of transcription. The lifeblood of the dead zone flows through your pen. A scavenger brings in a haul of copper wire stripped from a derelict building. You weigh it, you log it, you note the value assigned in units of food and filtered water. A woman who knows herbal remedies treats a deep infected cut. You log her service and the debt now owed by the patient. There are no names. Names are a ghost of a dead world. People are their function: welder, scout, hydroponics, guard. Your function is ledger. You are an abstraction, a role, a set of calculations. And in this anonymity, there is a strange, horrifying comfort. If you are not a person, you
cannot feel a person's pain.
You track the zone's dwindling resources with a cold, terrifying clarity. The generator consumes a precise amount of scavenged fuel per hour. The community consumes a predictable amount of calories per day. You see the whole community not as a collection of souls, but as a single, struggling organism, and your job is to identify and cauterize its wounds. You are its immune system. The woman, the one they call the director, comes to you at the end of what might have been your second week. She doesn't speak. She just points to a line in the ledger. The entry for tinker. A man who used to repair small electronics. An artist of the circuit board. But a notation from medic 3 pages back indicates he has a severe, lingering respiratory infection. His input has ceased, the director says. It is not a question. It is a statement of fact pulled directly from your own handwriting. He has drawn on the medical supplies 4 times. He consumes a full food ration. He produces nothing. The ledger is imbalanced. She looks at you. Her eyes are not asking for a human opinion. They are asking for a calculation. She is testing her new component. She is testing you. From the perspective of the ledger, she says, her voice as dry as dust, what is the efficient solution? You look at the numbers, at the debit column next to Tinker's name. You see the drain, the inefficiency. You think of the FedNow algorithm, the cold, proprietary risk assessment model that declared you a rounding error and deleted you. You see its logic laid bare, not in code, but in your own ink. The survival of the whole depends on the efficiency of its parts. A part that is a consistent drain threatens the entire system. You know the answer. You have known it since you sat down. You pick up the pen. You run your finger down Tinker's column. You find the final empty box. You don't look at the director. He is a net loss, you say, and the words feel like swallowing glass. The efficient solution is to cease the allocation of resources. You've said it. You've pronounced the sentence. Cease the allocation of resources. A clean, administrative phrase for starvation. A bureaucratic euphemism for a quiet, deliberate death. It's the most monstrous thing you have ever said, and it is the most logical sentence you have ever constructed. The director gives a single, curt nod of approval. You have passed the test. You have proven your utility. She walks away, leaving you alone with the humming generator and the weight of the book. You look down at your hand, the one holding the pen. It doesn't seem like your own. It is a tool, a component, an instrument
that just signed a man's death warrant, not with a flourish of evil, but with the quiet, banal click of an enter key.
You didn't escape the system. You just found a more honest version of it. A version with no illusions, no marketing, no patriotic promises. Just the raw, brutal calculus of survival, written in a book by a hand that you no longer recognize as your own. And as you sit there in the flickering light, a single haunting thought takes root in your mind, a thought more terrifying than any eviction notice, any locked account. What is the difference between the algorithm that erased you and the logic you have just used to erase another? And who will make the entry in the ledger when your own column becomes a net loss?